Season 3 of The Pass is here. I know it's long overdue. We have a new intro. We still got the same content. Well, actually, it's a little bit of new content because there's new things going on in 2019. So buckle up. We got a lot of things to talk about on The Pass. What is up? What's going on, y'all? Episode 247 of The Pass is here. I am your host, BT. I am really glad to be back to record yet another episode. I am not going to lie to y'all. I really have a lot of content and a lot of information to divulge and get into, and I don't want to waste any time. Do not let the title confuse you. I'll explain it when we get to it. There was a event that happened that I almost forgot had happened, but luckily I was off, so I was able to kind of get a good idea of it. But we'll get to that in a bit. As I always share, or as I like to mention, if you do want to support the show or support any of the different links, I do have the links in the show notes for all the brands and businesses and companies and motivational processes that have helped me get to where I am. I am going to work on updating those links to make sure, because I'm a big fan or a big believer of broken links. I'm not a fan of them as far as if a site's not working or it's down, I like to get rid of it so that way we don't carry pages that aren't being maintained. So I'm going to work on that. So if it looks crazy or throws you off, I get it. I'm not mad. I won't take it to heart. So when we last left our show, Golden State and Toronto had played game 1. And that game, Toronto did win, which was cool. I believe the following day from the podcast, game 2 came on TV. And I think there was a very unique, well, all the games, all the playoff finals, NBA finals games are on TV. But Game 2 was interesting because there were questions and concerns of what was going to be the status of Kevin Durant, Dooley, DeMarcus Cousins. There were different players as to the status of their playing in this game was uncertain. I said this on the show. I'm going to stick to it. I'm not breaking my trend or my pattern in saying this. I do not believe we're going to see Kevin Durant play another game for Golden State. I just don't. If he plays in game 5, which I'm going to get to in a bit because I want to give the attention and build up the suspense and talk about it, I would be shocked. Game 2, Golden State did win, which kind of made it assumed that Golden State had home court advantage now, because if they win their 2 games coming up in Golden State, then there was nothing to worry about. Well, from game 2, the issue became whether Klay Thompson was going to be available to play in game 3 or not. We got close to the game. Game 3 occurs, or game 3 arrives, Klay Thompson doesn't play. So now here it is, you have Golden State without 2 big stars in Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant. That's fine. That's neither here nor there. That's gonna be what it is. You let it be what it becomes. If I'm looking at this series, and I don't want to misquote this or mismark this statement, Kawhi is averaging 30 points a game in the finals. He had 30 in this game. I believe in game 4 he had 36. I'm going to double check that as well. But the game that I'm going to really give attention to is game 3. Kyle Lowry surprised me in a good way because he scored 23 points. He was 5 of 9 from 3, which we rarely would see him shoot above above 50%. He technically hit the 40, 50, 90 mark, even though he only shot 2 free throws. But, I mean, that's not his fault. He just got to the line as needed. He did have 9 assists. There was a very strange occurrence watching Steph Curry try to go into killer instinct mode. Steph had 47 points. After that, the next highest scorer was Draymond Green with 17. That type of basketball is not going to get you a playoff win in any series. So I'm putting emphasis on game 3 because now the question becomes, okay, they couldn't do it without Klay in game 3. Is he going to play game 4? They already kind of made it clear Durant was not ready, was not healthy. They don't want to take a chance. I don't care what anybody says. I think the injury is more serious than they're putting it out there to be. And that's okay. But the NFL has to, the NBA has to be accountable in acknowledging this. So we pushed the game. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I go into game 4, game 3 also presented a bit of a unexpected occurrence between Kyle Lowry and one of the investors, where Lowry went into the stands to get a loose ball, and the investor pushed him, and the push drew more attention than the game. It wasn't acknowledged that Toronto won the game. It was because of Kyle Lowry's reaction to being pushed. They suspended him. They suspended the investor from going to any games for a year and fined him $500,000. I feel like that was a lot of people thinking that was a steep charge, but I also, kind of broke it down and saying, if you look at the amount of ownership he had towards the team, as well as the amount of money that is to an investor, it's not that big, but it also isn't as impactful as the media made it to be. But that's all another story. So we got game 3 out the way. Toronto wins by 14. Game 4, Golden State, it wasn't even a you can kind of sort of win. It was literally a must-win game. Klay comes back. Kawhi's in form. Iguodala had been playing. Dooley actually was available for this game. Their starting big man, if I recall, he's available. I'm sorry, Kevin Looney. I don't know why I call him Dooley. Kevin Looney. Steph and Klay combined for 55 alone. After that, you had a disappearing act of your team. Iguodala had 3. Draymond had 10. Looney had 10. Cousins only had 6. They haven't really been giving him a lot of minutes because I think his injury is a lot more serious than we realize on his portion as well. Kawhi has 37. I'm sorry. Kawhi has 36. Lowry has 10. Siakam has 19. Danny Green had 3. And the 3 that he scored was an interesting 3 because of how Golden State had to play defense against Toronto. Because of that, it turned into a close and shutdown of, okay, we're not going to let Kawhi get us to, put work on us. So you left Danny Green open, who's a pretty good shooter. And that was that was one of the tales of the tape. You had Ibaka come off the bench with 20. You can't complain about that, obviously. So we're caught up. We're at our here and now. And here it is, game 5. Golden State has to win out. We're in deja vu from 3 years ago when Cleveland was in this exact same position. And it was the question of, could Cleveland do it? It was, and it's almost to be funny in saying, could LeBron do it? In their case, they were able to do it. This series, I don't know if I see that happening. And the only reason I say that is because the next game is actually in Toronto. If it was in Golden State, okay, I can see it. But getting the win, like in this series, the circumstance is a little different because Golden State coming back Game 7 would be in Toronto. So it would be as if they'd have to win. Golden State would have to win the championship on Toronto's floor. Good luck with that. I'm going to say this only because it's basketball and it's reality. Golden State has a strong chance to win Game 5. But it's going to either be Toronto finishing it out in Game 6, playing full out basketball, or let me backtrack. Because I'm saying Golden State winning Game 5. Let me bring that back a little bit. Toronto has a strong chance of winning Game 5 and getting Golden State the fuck out of here. Period. Use my French, but fuck it, whatever. Winning this series for Toronto will mean a lot for the organization as a whole. And we got to think about that. Golden State losing this series has an even bigger impact for them, especially when Game 4 that would possibly be their last game in that arena. Because the only other game that they're going to get would be Game 6 if they go to Game 6, which would be next Thursday. Because the games are going to be 3 days apart because of the traveling. So just keep that in mind with this series. Toronto's had 3-1. I see them either winning it 4-1 or 4-2. If it goes 7 games, Golden State's going to win this series. That's the prediction I'm putting out there now. So that's where we are with basketball, and I wanted to make sure, I would keep y'all up to date with the B-ball flow. I didn't realize until I was doing the list and going over all of the topics to talk about this week that a topic that needs to be talked about, because this is my first year reporting women's soccer on the podcast, because in 2015, I don't think the podcast was started or had been going. Obviously, last year we did the Men's Cup. We all remember what happened. Obviously, for sake of conversation, USA wasn't in it. France did indeed win. This year, it's a more interesting scenario because France is actually the host team. The group stages, all I can tell you is wow. Group A, you have France, Nigeria, Norway, Korea Republic. Group B, you're looking at Spain, Germany, China, and South Africa. Group C, Australia, Italy, Brazil, Jamaica. Group D, England, Scotland, Argentina, and Japan. Group E, Canada, Cameroon, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. And finally, Group F is USA, Thailand, Chile, Sweden. They got a pretty light group, except for Sweden. Sweden concerns me from their group. I'm not going to even lie. But yeah, France put on a good match on yesterday for the nothing. Today, 2 games that have been played were Germany beating China and Spain beat South Africa. Germany was 1-0. Spain was 3-1. Right now, Norway is playing Nigeria, and that score is 1-0. Those scores will be updated. Now, of course, as I'm reading this all to you all, it's going to be updated from that point. But I wanted to at least get those stories in for women's soccer because I am a soccer guy, and the Women's Cup is a big deal. And to stick with soccer, I don't have these stories. I always like to give y'all stories because it's like, hey, it's a story that happened, but I don't want to ignore it. We'll go ahead and do Chelsea versus Liverpool talk. Liverpool did indeed win the UEFA Champions League. So I will give them their props as much as I don't want to. That was a soft, slow clap. I don't have I have my soundboard, but due to location, I won't use it for this show. But Liverpool did win 2-0. As many people may or may not know, the Champions League format, when you get to the final game, is whoever wins that game, that's it. There's not like a what do they call it, where you play on one field, you play on one at one field, and then you play at another. They play at that one venue, which happened to be Real Madrid, who they, if I remember correctly, Real Madrid beat Liverpool last year, and there was a big talk about that match in the Champions League, because I recall, I think I was watching it. I watched. It's crazy. Our friend Mark, who is a soccer fan, shout out to Mark. He's been on the show before. He actually is doing sand soccer today. So last year we watched the game at his place, and I can remember him being livid about the one of the players for, I think it was Sergio Ramos. He's like, fuck him, he's shit. And I just can recall that conversation. So looking, forwarding to today or to last week, and I want to say that game came on right after I did the show, because I recall recording, doing the full show, didn't have a chance to edit, but the next day I did edit, but that was one of the topics that I wanted to add into the mix. So props to them. On the opposite end with Chelsea, it's so hard to say goodbye to Eden Hazard. That was the best rendition you were going to get it at, because it ain't going to happen. But Eden Hazard is going to Real Madrid for €100 million over 5 years. I don't know the specs of the contract offhand, but that deal was able to be completed. And also our manager decided to go to Juventus, which I'm very intrigued by that. I understood why, with him being Italian and going to an Italian team. That part wasn't the surprise, but based on how the Premier League, his first year there, like, I'm trying to remember, because I don't think this was actually his only year with the team, because he didn't really, the championship we won was with our previous coach, our previous manager. I can't remember his name offhand. I don't know why I want to say Conte, but I'm probably missing it. And of course, Mourinho. But now he comes in, Sarri comes in, and he was like, well, I'm here. There wasn't really the best chemistry in the team, at least that I saw, but, hey, it is what it is. So he's now in Juventus with Ronaldo. Juventus had a pretty good first year with Ronaldo in Serie A. I'm not going to even lie. I think AC Milan actually was in third or fourth, which shocked me as an AC fan. So big ups to all of that and everything going on in the soccer world. Not my normal story, but it's a funny story because I happened to see it in a media pool and just kind of looking through some stories. They were talking about there was a player for the Milwaukee Brewers who was not really a pitcher, that was put in place to be a pitcher. And Deadspin, I will give them credit. Some of the stories they do are horribly funny and random, but they fit for the moment. And this one is no exception. Hernan Perez was able to pitch to get 3 outs within a matchup against another team where the score was 16-0. And he actually showed all of his pitches. I'm not going to go through all of it now. But this story was interesting because you just can imagine, not once did his pitch go over 75 miles an hour. And I think what makes it interesting is it actually worked. So that's kind of why I'm giving this story its praise or attention. That is actually everything for sports that I have, and it's kind of fast for my sports side, but it happens sometimes. Stuff is, I'm going to go through stuff as best as I can, but not be too boring with what has happened in, I'm sorry, not sports, in stuff. So we did our last show on Saturday. It was loaded up on Sunday. That Monday, big things happened. And I'm glad that what people were expecting to happen happened. And I'll go into that, and that'll actually tie into the title of the show. So normally every year they do an event. Apple does a keynote event to talk about what's coming for Apple at the midway point of the year. They call it WWDC. Now, I should know what this stands for, but for sake of argument and discussion, we're just going to call it what it is, WWDC. When they showed a lot of the images and information about this event, they actually donned it WW, which is WW. And so, they went through the keynote. Now, I will go ahead and tell you in advance, 30 minutes of the keynote I missed. I was out running errands and doing personal things, but I did end up watching the vast majority of the keynote. I did get, luckily with Twitter, you can always go online and see what you missed and check out what was being said. And I mean, everyone was waiting for the big news of Apple's, the iOS getting dark mode, which may not seem like a lot, but for some people, it's been something that's been requested for a while. It didn't help because Facebook Messenger kind of teased it with if you send someone a picture of a moon, you'll get the option to change your screen into dark mode for Facebook Messenger, which meant, okay, it's on Messenger, why isn't it on everything else? I will be the first to admit Twitch, Discord, Reddit, Spotify, obviously, most of my core third-party apps are in dark mode. And we'll talk about Spotify in a few as well. So a couple big takeaways that did make their mark on WWDC. One of them was privacy crackdown. So I'm going to not read what these articles are. I'm going to paraphrase and kind of break down what this entails. Anyone that uses your typical programs to sign in or log into different pages, they'll always show log in with Facebook, log in with Google. After a certain point, you're tired of giving Facebook and Google your information. And Apple's biggest push has been about privacy, even with that story of the kid who hacked into their information just to get a job with Apple and still didn't get the job. But now they're given the option to show it as, now you can just sign in directly with Apple and not have to go through other social media sites to get to what you're setting up. There's also, and this isn't stated in here, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. When it comes to receiving those emails and having, to subscribe to different accounts, you can now set that up so that it's sent to an email that's processed through your regular emails, but you're not giving the said company your actual email address. And for me personally, that's a big one, because even if you unsubscribe to all of those things, like I just got introduced, and this is not for promotion. This is just something that I've personally found and it's stuck. There is a program called Unroll Me or Unroll.me, something like that, where it basically can take any emails that are from subscriptions or different things that you constantly get, and you can have them all sent as one actual email and read them at your convenience, or you can just kind of open it and do whatever you want with it. Because most of the times I just open it and it's like, all right, cool, I got them out the way. Like for me, I read a lot of WordPress articles. I used to have them all under that, but then I was like, well, I actually want to read these blogs. But then I realized getting all of these emails for different blogs, trying to catch up and read them isn't the easiest thing, but it happens. So that's kind of a long drawn out version of what the privacy factor is. Next up is the iPad OS. It's a fancy way of saying that iPad is kind of going to have its own stance with how they handle their OS and how things are implemented. They're kind of wanting to get that separated, because if you really look at it, even with an iPad mini or the iPhone XS Max, they're both going to have things run in different ways. So having the OS be separated but still get the same treatment, it's just kind of a breakdown in what the design, what developers can factor in with making apps and things of that sort. Apple gets gaming. Condensed form of it is Xbox One and PlayStation 4 controllers will be able to be used with iOS devices, which is like about time. It's, they announced, Apple announced that the Apple TV, iPhone, and iPad will officially support Xbox One and PS4 controllers. That completely changes the game and means big things for the Apple Arcade service, which is coming this fall. So that means it won't work with the original Mac devices, like your MacBooks, MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, Mac Pro, things of that nature. Apple Watch is going to be getting their own Apple App Store, which I think that's good, because now it doesn't limit a developer to making an app to be usable on the watch as well as on the phone. This is going to help towards those with the newer watches. Like I know for me, I still have Series 1. If you have either Series 3 or Series 4, that's where that's where those things come in as a big play. They did talk about different health features that are going to be coming in, helping with women as far as when your period comes. I know that's like a transparent way of saying it, but it's the truth. It's kind of like a way of managing your feminine process. That's all I got. I'm a guy. You don't want me to try and fool myself and thinking I know what I'm talking about. But it is, you'll still need to have an iPhone to use your Apple Watch based on the upcoming process with the Watch OS 6. That is, like I said, I think my watch stopped at 2, either 2 or 3. I think I either got 2 or 3 and I haven't gotten any more Watch OS updates. So I just kind of say, you know what, it's cool. Like I use my watch for the core minimum anyway of while I'm at work and if I'm playing sports, but that's about it. iOS apps on Mac will be huge. There is going to be a way for developers on an iPad to get apps that are on an iPad, apps that are developed for an iPad to run on Mac with not much of a issue or a hiccup with coding. It will take longer for a lot of devs, especially if they do extra work to make the Mac version more Mac-like, but it's a huge start. Once there are tens of thousands of popular iPhone and iPad apps on the Mac, we could be looking at a real surge in Mac sales, and that's always what it's going to be about, is the bottom line and getting the business. And that's everything that they have. Like I said, everyone's waiting for dark mode. They did introduce the Mac Pro, which everyone screamed of joy and annoyance because it's a $6,000 minimum device. And there's kind of like mixed feels about that. I'm trying to think what was the other big thing, because there were a couple things that I looked at and caught my attention and said, all right, I'm ready for this new wave with what Apple has coming. They gave us a little bit of a sneak peek of what the OS looks like. Those of you who are dev users or have yourself set up to get the beta that they used on stage is available, so you can get that. If you're looking to get if you're trying to get set up with, if you want to wait for the actual public beta, you can try that out. Most cases, I usually do the public beta, or I may just rock with it and give the official app or the official OS update its run, which is not until September. So if you just want to wait that out, you're welcome to do so as well. It's not like a right or wrong way of coming at it. But those are, that, like I said, I figured that would be like the biggest heap of discussion. So I wanted to go ahead and get that part talked about with WWDC. From everything that I saw, and even with what they've mentioned, there's going to be a huge change in technology with OSs. Only thing that I'm looking at, even as an Apple user, and this is even with technology as a whole, is what's next. I get that we're getting, the new iPhone that's on the way. We'll get to that point when we get there, because I don't want to talk about it now. I am waiting to see. Now, they did show, and I'll share this and we'll go to the next subject. They did show the new Memojis, which to some people may not seem like a lot, but for a lot of females and for guys who are into that, it gives you a little bit more flexibility and creativity. Like, I know for me personally, I'm excited about the new Memojis because they finally are getting AirPods. That's all I need. You don't even have to put, I'll give them a year. I feel like they're going to find a way to implement Power Beats, but that's down the line. We're not, crossing that bridge. We're going to let this one ride out. So that's everything that I have on DubDub 2019 or WWDC, whatever you choose. Since we're kind of into gaming a little bit, I do want to talk about, it started today. E3 is officially here. Next week, I'm going to make it my goal to get as much E3 content without bombarding the podcast, because that is likely going to be what could happen. Today, they were doing, Electronic Arts was showing some of their games that are coming or updates between Battlefield, FIFA 20, Madden 20. They also showed some updates for Apex. I was in the midst of watching some of that, and I was like, I got to get ready to record. So I'm going to be getting that information and content, and we'll definitely talk about it on the show. And if you hear me, before we go any further, because I do want to mention this, because I know I've said it a lot, but I want to acknowledge it because it's important. If you hear me use or say the word content a lot, it's because we really are at a point with the show where it's not just me sitting here talking about what's going on in the world, but it's providing content to those who listen. And some of you are like, well, we know that, so why are you making an announcement? And I'm glad you asked. I'm bringing that to attention or making it an announcement because it's very relevant and very key to what you all are here for, which is to hear what my thoughts are on different things that are out or that are on the way. Like Apple, it's not, and I'm think even with me being an Apple fan or let me rephrase that, an Apple user, I can still say when Apple does things wrong. I'm sticking to it and I'm not breaking my pattern. I feel as though the Mac Pro that's getting ready to come out is a waste of money and a waste of time, but that also doesn't mean that it's not targeted for those who could use that product. So I just want to bring that up as far as the content, because I know I always say the word content and it's like, all right, y'all, you keep putting it in like you're trying to fill space. So I just want to get that out of the way. This is a quick story. I'm not gonna really give a whole lot of attention to it. The Tesla cars, the Model 3, Model S, and Model X, which are coming later on this summer, will have the side-scroller game Cuphead that a lot of people have known to love. in implanted or placed in the cars as one of the playable games available. I think it's a cool feature. I just shared it because it was a story that I happened to read, and I was like, I'll talk about it, especially with Cuphead being one of those big games that could balance out people's rage as well as acknowledge, like, hey, if you're in a frustrating state, it's okay to be that way. So I just want to put that piece out there to the masses. I posted a tweet on my personal page, but I'm going to say it on the show now. A lot of people are getting into podcasting. I see more people sharing and liking and supporting a lot of podcasters, and I have no problem with it because there's a strong chance they're supporting me. So I'm not knocking or taking any of those listens or shows for granted whatsoever. I bring this up and I say this because it is projected that by 2021, the podcast industry is expected to hit $1 billion in annual revenue. That's telling. And the reason it's telling is because it's showing you that we are now in a streaming based environment. One of the quickest things to stream, as long as you have data and or Wi-Fi, is our podcast. If people, everyone, like a friend of mine said this to me yesterday, and I really had to think about it because it's pretty accurate. You really don't have to watch the news anymore to get what's going on in the world, because most podcasts are going to talk about, hey, here's what's going on in the world. Up next, I haven't listened to them in a while, but they're a podcast by NPR that, they keep you in the know of what's going on with the world. Most of your sports big names have their own podcast where they're talking about what's already been talked about on TV. So it works out in that facet as well. And this is, with podcast ads being added, Spotify, looking to add those. I already know for a fact, I'm on Spreaker, and I say this now because if you've gotten this far into the show, I wish there was a way for me to control the ads on Spreaker, but I also am looking to, it's kind of my breaking the ice of like, hey, I want people to come in and listen. Because I know in most cases, if you're on a site, say Libsyn, anything of that sort, then you not really get ads. You just listen to your show and call it a day. But I'm, an up and coming podcaster still, even with me doing this for as long as I have. So if you hear those ads, it's 30 seconds. I get that it's a long period of time. Set the phone off to the side, let it play, and tune in and gain some great content. But they do talk about how there is a projected amount of money behind the big dogs of podcasting. With your companies such as Luminary, which we thought was going to be out of here a while ago, and Himalaya, which is kind of a random, they kind of give you a random source or listening for podcasts, which I think is great. And everyone is jumping on board. Like, you already had Apple being one thing I forgot to mention. I'm glad this popped in my head because I'm gonna tie back to this because I don't want to forget it. Everyone has their feelings and their thoughts about iTunes separating or iTunes being cut into pieces. I'm going to, because I didn't talk about this during the WWDC. They did show this during the keynote, and it's time for us to accept it. When iTunes was first released, and before I continue, because I don't want to confuse anybody, I'm basically, I've talked about everything with the podcast story, but this part, when I thought about podcasts, I'm like, it was something that happened, and I was like, I want to talk about it, but I couldn't remember. When iTunes was first invented, created, set up, it was made for the iPod. The purpose of the purpose of iTunes was so that your iPod could be connected to iTunes, and any music that you either had purchased and or downloaded we're not going to go any further than that, was available to be transferred over to your device. So we go through the iPod Classic, the first gen, second gen, third gen. When we got to the colored screens, before the iPod Nano, the iPod Touch, that whole iPod generation was what iTunes was all about. It was getting that media that was on your physical laptop over to that portable device to listen to or watch. Fast forward to 2019 compared to when this all first started in about 2001, maybe a little later. Well, I'm sorry, 2008. I'm probably reaching with that number because I feel like it was further back. Like we're looking at like mid to late 2000s. Now you have podcasts in this program. You have Apple Music in this program. You have Apple TV in this program. You have your own personal music in this program. You have streaming radio in this program. It's too many things put into one program. So Apple's convenience for Apple, aka / Mac users, not Windows. Windows won't be affected by this as tremendously. Let me get that clear too. If you have a Windows computer, they're not going to split Windows, iTunes into three programs. Wouldn't make sense, at least from my perspective. They're going to keep iTunes because they need to still have iTunes as an available resource for those with Windows. But for Mac, get rid of iTunes and break it down into Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and Apple TV. Most people don't use Apple TV as needed, so that's one app that's gone in a sense. Not everybody has Apple Music, so Apple Music is gone. If Apple Music is resourceful for anything, it's to store your songs if you have like songs that you still keep, personally. But most of us are streaming. So, you're either streaming from Apple Music or you're streaming from other programs, Tidal, Spotify, whatever. So you have all of that. And then the podcast app itself is mainly just a home for keeping track. Like personally, I need that program to run and function because managing all of the podcasts that I follow and subscribe to, it's not easy. And it's tough because you don't want to do a speed listen through shows, but some cases you come out better listening in that format to get all of your listens. So I just want to get that in there, and as a random sidebar, but I wanted to mention it before I go too far. Do I even want to talk about this? I'm not gonna really make too much into this other than we kind of see this coming. GameStop is looking to cut costs in order to deal with the plunge in console sales. No one buys physical. Well, we're to a point now where physical discs will be a figment of our imagination. Most of your companies, when it comes to you trying to find games or play games, they have their streaming service or they have it so that you can download their games and play, as you feel the need. The pricing is the issue, but it's also, you can also even that out if you're a person who really is into gaming and wants to get games as they become available. It's a tight rope that you're dealing with, but it also isn't the worst idea. PS4 and Xbox One are clearly approaching the end of their main life cycles, and that's doing serious damage to GameStop's bottom line. The video game store's Q1 profits fell to $6.8 million, just a quarter of what they were a year earlier, based on a steep 35% drop in new hardware sales. And that's after accounting for the Nintendo Switch's strong performance. While GameStop didn't explain the decline, gamers knew the next PlayStation and Xbox Scarlet, quote unquote, were on the horizon. There wasn't much point to buying a current gen system. The much gentler dip in software sales reinforced this. The only time that they really made, and I'm not gonna really give this a lot of attention. The only time that console sales really spike are holidays, and holidays predominantly just referring to Christmas. Christmas time, people are buying consoles. It's a given. There's not really a roundabout way of saying it. So GameStop's getting hit or getting affected because of that, and we're just gonna see what the future stands for GameStop. GameStop always comes in with an appearance of a story. A lot of people don't like GameStop. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been in GameStop in over a year. Like, I don't really buy many new games because I barely play what I have now. So that's kind of where that goes. Sonic the Hedgehog, Echo the Dolphin, Castlevania Bloodlines, Tetris, Darius, Road Rash 2, Strider, Virtua Fighter 2, Alicia Dragoon, Kid Chameleon, Monster World 4, Eternal Champions, Columns, Dynamite Headdy, Light Crusader, Altered Beast, Gunstar Heroes, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Contra Hard Corps. Everything that I'm naming, I'm not going to go through this whole list, but these are your 42 games that will be on the Sega Genesis Mini. They are actually available for pre-order, and the system will arrive on September the 19th. We're getting the core 3-button version, which is the original typical Genesis. They're not going to be doing the extended 6-button, which I don't blame. Like I said, they go over the full list. The console is actually up for pre-order at Walmart for $80, and it is on Amazon, and it comes with 2 bundled controllers. The concern and the question, of course, is going to be how will this console do compared to the others? The original Nintendo was like a needle in a haystack. They didn't make any. They shut it down. They weren't going to make any more. They decided to do it again. Super Nintendo came out, got a little bit more attention. Still can find those, but it's not as big of a deal. We all know about PlayStation. Everyone was like, oh, the PlayStation Classic is coming out. It's going to be the one. They brought out the wrong games. They had to practically drop the system down to like $40. I think this system is going to sell, though. And I'm going to tell you, in my personal opinion, why. If you look at the list of games that are included, you're getting a pretty solid amount of games for most people who were of that generation and of that time that played or owned a Genesis. Toe Jam and Earl Classic, Dr. Robotnik, Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition, definitely. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, come on now, can't beat that. Virtua Fighter 2. Still upset because I can't find it on my retro console, Tetris, because I was like, I'm going to find it. That was actually one of the Mega Drive games, and I was able to look up a little bit of history on that, which was cool. Columns, Altered Beast, obviously. Contra was good, would be good for those who even like the Nintendo version. The Sega version would be a little bit more enhanced. Let's see. Sonic Spinball, obviously. A game that's not listed, but I also am understanding of why Mortal Kombat would have been good. But I also know there's the whole copywriting. I personally am not going to expect any NBA games or NFL games to come out for any of these systems, because then you got to deal with Acclaim, Midway, EA Sports, all those companies. It's not worth it. My personal thought of these retro consoles that I'm thinking about, that no one's going to say, but I'm going to think about it or bring it to attention. Since they're bringing all these systems back, are they going to bring back the PlayStation 2 again? I'm curious, are they going to bring it back? And if they bring it back, are they going to bring it back as a mini, as they brought these systems? I'm very curious in thinking about that. Just my random thought. Our next story is I actually got to use this because I was very intrigued to see how it would work. And it is about it's Spotify's spinoff to compete with Pandora. Anyone that knows Pandora, you basically can go in Pandora, and if you have a subscription, you can listen to any song. I mean, you can listen to as many songs as you want, unlimited skips, things of that sort. You kind of get playlists curated to your preference. Spotify kind of took what they have in their Spotify app itself, cut it off from the Spotify app, and made its own separate app called Stations, which I think is great because now instead of me trying to go find this good playlist, I can just go to Stations and I've got different stations already set. I think for mine, I can check real quick, but I believe I got some pretty good ones so far. I hope it doesn't play. If it does, I can't be fine, and I'm not gonna do it because it's not gonna load. Great, works for me. But yeah, so those are kind of your start to finish, like full breakdown of those of what they're bringing. So here's why. Oh, I knew it was gonna do it. So right now I have. Can I turn this down? All right, I have my favorites. I have Solange, I have 2 Chainz, Smooth R&B, 2000s R&B, and Calm Classical. So all of these are stations that are preset within the app itself. And what's good about it is, what you have to learn with using this app is, if you are playing a station on the Stations app, don't go to Spotify trying to think it's going to pick up where you left off, because it's going to mix up. It's going to overpower itself, if that makes sense. It's hard. It's simple to explain, but it's hard to explain. It's like you got to let Stations do what Stations does, and you need to let Spotify do what Spotify does, especially if you have a premium account. So just keep that in mind. And if that noise just hit because I'm looking at the sound mark, my bad. Let's see. It was introduced in Australia earlier this year. They call it the Pandora knockoff. With the world's music at your fingertips, finding the right thing to play can feel like a challenge. Stations get you to music instantly, no searching or typing needed. Like the long-running internet radio service it apes, Spotify Stations relies on user feedback in the form of a thumbs up or thumbs down to create personalized playlists. Easily tune your stations by adding or removing artists. Since moving to the UK and losing access to my curated Pandora channels, I've learned to lean on Spotify's pre-generated playlists and artist or radio stations for effortless listening. But there's only so far similar to Elton John can take you. Open stations for instantaneous tunes, occasionally disrupted by advertisements for free users. Premium subscribers can enjoy an ad-free experience while skipping an unlimited amount of tracks, Billboard revealed. This platform requires a Spotify account, does incorporate popular features like Discover Weekly, Release Radar, and Favorites. At Spotify, we routinely conduct a number of experiments to create a better listening experience for our users, a company spokesperson shared in an email. And they just give a little bit more information about it as a whole. My immediate rushed review of stations is, I don't have enough stations to really process stations, but I value having stations as a backup if I don't feel like searching through Spotify, if that makes sense. Spotify can be very easy, but it can be very overwhelming. So if you don't really like the format of what Spotify's general app gives, that's where Stations comes in. I will give this a couple of months. If it sticks, they're likely going to do like they did with Pandora, where they have a standalone app on devices. And that will then turn into a let it play and leave it. Because that's where people are with their listening. Where this can be helpful too is with those podcast platforms of, okay, I want to listen to some podcasts, but I don't feel like trying to look through and find different podcasts in different locations. You got a podcast playlist of different formats or styles that you listen to. You can go right through and just play them. So it works in that regard too. So like I said, I like the concept. I think I'm about barely a week into using it. I think I used it like Monday or Tuesday of this week. So I've got about 4 or 5 days under my belt. And I haven't really used it to a T, only because you don't really find yourself navigating to that app first for music. I'm more likely to go to Spotify. So it's still just a learning go type of ordeal. Speaking of which, everyone, like I said, everyone's in a podcast. James Corden, they're talking about his podcast on Variety. Telling y'all now, because if you made it to this point, I appreciate you. Michelle and Barack are going to be the cover of this podcast, because this story to some may not seem like a lot, but after I really broke it down and really thought about it, this one is going to make you kind of think twice about what's going on. Both Michelle and Barack have signed a Spotify deal to produce exclusive podcasts. They are working under a pact with Spotify to produce a series of podcasts exclusively for the streaming platform. The deal is between Spotify, I don't know why, I'm like trying to clunk everything possible, Spotify and Higher Ground Productions, the former First Couples production company. Barack and Michelle Obama are set to develop, produce, and lend their voices to select podcasts on a wide range of topics. If y'all listening, come check out my show. The agreement is with Higher Ground Audio, a new division of the Higher Ground production company that is housing the Obamas' move into podcasts. The Obamas formed Higher Ground last year, saying their goal is to foster new, diverse voices in the entertainment biz. The couple has a multi-year deal with Netflix to produce original scripted, unscripted, and documentary series and films, and earlier this spring announced 7 initial projects in development. Spotify will distribute the Obamas podcast worldwide to its paid and ad-supported user base. In the first quarter, Spotify said it had 100 million premium subscribers and more than 217 million monthly active users overall. Speaking of which, I can't believe next month will be a year that I've been on Spotify. Might have to do a Spotify breakdown since I've had a year under my belt. It's another story. And to talk about more information regarding this acquisition. I'm gonna say this. Podcasting is making its mark in ways that others did not expect. And I'm okay with that. I want music and podcasting to be balanced, because you can't listen to every song. You can't hear every podcast. You can't read or write every blog. That's why you get the information and attain the knowledge as it's available. It's that simple. Them joining and also getting others on board, the first thing I thought about is when Apple did their keynote a couple of months ago and they had Oprah on. Connecting Oprah with Apple is big, because if Oprah's with Apple, maybe I'll get an Apple. And I know that's like a weird way of saying it, but it's sounding really creepy. But in all fairness, like if the opportunity is there to venture into something new, why not? And the Obamas are teaching us what we all have to remember. We should always be working to find ways of making at least, up to 6 sources of income or 6 streams of income. And so far, I'm on 1, and I'm still trying to get 2 and 3 in process. But that's life. So I'm just bringing that to. I'm being funny, but I'm also being serious. Like they're tackling the media in a different form, and they're also targeting those who aren't really thinking ahead of the curve to think, hey, you can think ahead of the curve, and like here's what's on that other side of the curve if you really set your mind to it. I'm going to get into our ass of the week in a moment. It's a weird ass of the week, but it's a funny ass of the week because I'm not going to play the videos, but I'm going to talk about it in a moment. We are going to get into a bit of a AirPod escape or music sesh while I have the opportunity to. Tyga dropped a new album. It had the song Taste on it. Caught me off guard for a second, but then I realized it's actually a pretty good listen. If I did not recommend this album already, Flamagra by Flying Lotus, please check out that album. If y'all hear any noise, I'll get it all out in my own way. I'm trying to think what other. I did get recommendation to listen to Steve Lacy, his album Apollo 21. I'm going to be listening to that, giving it more listen. Jim Jones, I went back and actually listened to his album. Wow, oh wow. Definitely check that album out. Like that's a good escape. AirPod escape, Powerbeats escape, headphone escape, whatever type of Bluetooth or wired headphones you have, play that album. You will be appreciative of it. Big time. Trying to think what other albums I've really been on. I did listen to Devon Terrell's new single, Replay. Great song. He drops a new single on Fridays and he doesn't disappoint. Naya Ali has a new single, Get It Right. Good song as well. Let me make sure. Yep, it's just a single. I was like, wait, is it a single or is it an album? Erykah Badu has a new song called Tempted. Definitely want to check that one out. Goldlink has a single called You Say with Tyler the Creator and Jay Prince. Did listen to that single. Pretty impressed with it, not even gonna lie. And that's kind of been the AirPod escape that I've had this week. Like I've caught some song. Like I said, I did listen to Future's album. It's a lot going on for me personally, but it doesn't mean it's not a bad album. It doesn't go with what I'm into listening to as far as music. So that's kind of where it's at. Denzel, is it Denzel Curry? It's another artist that I did look at and I tried to listen to the album, but T Grizzly. T Grizzly is not my speed. I tried it though. One thing with me with listening, and when I do AirPods Escape, I always like to, I know I throw names at y'all, but a lot of the artists that are listed, it's like, I've never heard this artist before. I don't know who they are, but I'll put it in my queue and let it play. And if it's like, all right, I like this, okay, cool. If I don't, all right, I tried it, let's move on. But yeah, that's where I'm at. And I have not talked about this yet. I do listen to Grassroots Podcast, and I joined their group chat. It is the funniest, but most amazing group chat I've met. Because when a conversation comes up, it's like you just throw the ball in the air and it's like, let it go. So that's how that all went. Our ass of the week is in China. And it's an interesting ass of the week, and I'll explain why in a moment. So back in, was it May? I think it was, May. Virginia Beach had an event called Something in the Water. I believe it was day 2. There was a blow up figurine or blow up doll. I don't want to say doll, but it's like one of the floats that you would kind of see like in a parade. They had it as a Cause character, which is with anyone who knows or is aware of the brand KAWS. I didn't know much about KAWS until I saw that image at the time. Well, KAWS has their own clothing line, merchandise, things of that sort. There was a t-shirt that had been released in China. And for whatever reason, when these stores or venues opened the door to sell these shirts, it turned into a madhouse. And like I said, I'm not going to play the videos only for the sake of the just audio, and it's not going to do it any justice. But the most interesting part is when you would see the people setting up to have the gates rise to let people in, and all you're seeing is Chinese people sliding under the gate just to run in and get shirts. And they're just picking up shirts. They're not looking at what size it is. Because everybody it's probably going to sound so stereotypical. Everybody look like they about the same size. So they just all picking up shirts. Like, I'm just going to get the shirt. And they just getting the shirts and paying for them, I'm assuming. We're going to go with they paid for them because you're in a store. But it was just chaotic in watching their movement of all of this happening. So I'm not going to really, it said the American artist KAWS has once again teamed up with Japanese clothing chain for a series of shirts that were released worldwide. In China, clips show all hell breaking loose. Footage circulating online shows people rushing the stores, even dropping their cell phones as they race towards the store, pulling shirts off mannequins. That was my favorite part. And pull the arms off mannequins to remove the shirts, and getting into fights over the desirable $15 tops. According to what's on Weibo, the hashtag #EverybodyKAWS has 140 million views on Weibo, China's version of Twitter. Global Times reports how rumors circulated that this would be KAWS' last collaboration with Uniqlo. The release was met with long lines around the world, with shoppers snapping up everything they could. And then they show all the videos. All I'm thinking of is just the videos. When I saw Homegirl take the mannequin and try to take the shirt off, and it wasn't coming off for her the way she wanted, and she took off one of the arms and just took the shirt off of it, I said, I've never seen that before. For anything in America, Jordan's a whole different level, obviously, but for shirts, $15 shirts, just keep that in mind. And there, like I said, there are a lot of videos that shows what happened. Like, people were fighting. It was just not your normal process. They did also add, according to That's Mag, however, the shirts have been going for up to 4 times more than Taobao. I get it. This is a hype release. People are excited. People want these shirts. But next time, hopefully, Uniqlo can release them in a way that doesn't lead to fisticuffs. The only way to do that is online. Just my suggestion. So those are all of our stories for this week. And I am here to give the closing message, passing the message. And I normally, think of some crafty message or way of saying something, but this one actually works out because so a friend of mine, her and her husband invited me to their service, Village of Faith. It was a unique interaction because there was someone there who I had seen that I had not seen in years. I didn't talk with them, but I'd seen them, and it kind of caught me off guard, but, no bigs. But I was able to, see them, have a moment with their family in embracing a big transition. But it also helped me in, I was able to listen to the message. And the message that I got from going to their sermon or going to their service was to be thankful and to give thanks for what you have gotten. As humans and as people, we spend more time wanting. I want. I deserve. You should give me. But we don't take time to look at, like in my case, I have reliable transportation. I have a reliable source of income. I have a reliable source of income to maintain a podcast for as long as I have. How it's been done, I can't tell all my secrets, but I've done it. And I'm saying that in a funny sense, but in hindsight, the reality is I've made my goal to make this work for what I'm doing. And a lot of times I really don't think about how important it is to just pray and be thankful. You know, we don't pray, or we don't really put our time into knowing how important it is to love and take on what life gives us. So my message today is be thankful and be humble. Like, don't complain. I think people complain more about what they're without instead of looking at what they are with. And I really at first didn't get that before, but I've noticed after getting this message, it kind of stuck where I was like, you know what? I really have been super selfish. And it's never, when you're in a super selfish state, life is going to tell you like, all right, you're being selfish with something that's not worth, you know, you're being selfish, which is understandable, but there's not a smart method in being that selfish. And I'm just here to tell people, like, we as people should try to just value what life gives us. I'm going to give the scripture because I don't want to just give the message and like not tell you where it hit or how it all came together. But this is from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18. Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. So always rejoice and be glad, be thankful, pray every moment that you have. Like we pray, of course, when we eating food, but you know, that this food doesn't harm or hurt us, but we don't take time like when we get in the car to pray for traveling mercies over me as I go to and from. And I close out that quick. Give thanks in all circumstances. Like, take time and just say thank you for, like, thank y'all for listening. Like, I don't say it enough, but I really do appreciate people listening. I appreciate people telling me, yo, I had somebody check out your show. So I value those things. If I don't say it here, thank y'all. So this is our show. This is the end of 247. 248 is going to be a surprise show. And I'll go ahead and talk about this now. I was initially not going to do this week's show. I was just going to let these topics ride into next week, and I'll have my show, my guest this week. But I want to still give content or still give a show for my weekly show because there's a lot of stuff that happened. Some things that we talk about on here may come up on tomorrow or on the next recording of the show. But I wanted to at least talk about these topics while they're fresh and while it's all happening. So next week, we will continue women's soccer. We may have a NBA final champion, first time champion, perhaps. OVO, stand up in the 6, defending North. I don't know. E3 is going to be E3 is going to be huge. I'm going to definitely be pushing to get notifications heavy on E3 because I don't want to sell E3 short on what it brings to the table. I believe PlayStation is not going to be there this year, so that's going to be even more of a unique scenario, but we'll talk about that as well. But anywho, y'all are awesome. podcast recorded each week on Spreaker.com. Brate Podcast. If you're looking to get into podcasting, if you want to get some tips and tricks, passpodcastbt@gmail.com. And the microphone that you hear me on and why I sound so beautiful is thanks to the Blue Yeti microphone. I am looking to get a new cord because I don't want the cord that I have now to lose its value from threading and me constantly wrapping it up like I am in a band. So I'm going to work on that and figure out something better to keep this cord under control. But that's it. Y'all have a good one. Take it easy. Have a great week. Do something positive. Say something positive. Give some information that's worthwhile to someone else. And until next time, y'all take it easy. Another episode is in the books. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. As I always share, if you'd like to get into podcasting, you can check out Spreaker.com. And if you're looking to invest in a microphone or if you're looking to genuinely start with recording, I use the Blue Yeti microphone, but you may prefer to do the Samson Meteor. Just know that if it's your craft and it's something that you're meant to do it and do it well. That's my main thing to tell people about 2019. Do it and be reliable. Y'all take it easy.